An HOA enforcer named Denise fined a nurse for letting her rescue dog walk barefoot on the grass. Obsessed with control, she turned the neighborhood against Madison with photos and public shaming. But Madison had deep ties in the veterinary world and used them to launch a national campaign that landed 500 dog booties on Denise's lawn. Just wait until you see how this picture-perfect HOA meeting turned into poetic justice. When Madison Trent moved into the sleepy cul-de-sac of Bayshore Pines, she wasn't chasing excitement. She was chasing peace. After 15 years working double shifts in the ER, she'd seen enough trauma to last 2 lifetimes. Her golden retriever, Toby, had been her shadow through the darkest years. Now, this cozy Florida neighborhood, with its trimmed hedges, lazy breezes, and echoing sprinklers, felt like a breath she'd been holding finally released. That breath caught in her throat the morning she opened her front door and found a bright orange slip taped over her welcome sign. It wasn't a lost dog flyer or a neighborly invitation. It was an official violation notice from the HOA, her infraction, allowing Toby to walk on community grass, barefoot. The wording was clinical but absurd. Animal paw protection required when traversing HOA-managed green spaces. Repeat offenses may trigger formal review. At the bottom, a handwritten note in a perfect cursive flourish added, "We must preserve lawn integrity. D. Coulter." Denise Coulter. Madison didn't even need to check the HOA directory to recognize the name. Denise was the type of neighbor who introduced herself with a printed title, Green Space Coordinator, and carried more laminated bylaws in her purse than a city clerk. The neighborhood kids called her the Lawn Queen. Adults had other names for her, whispered only behind screened porches. At first, Madison laughed. Dog shoes? On grass? In Florida? She assumed it was a mistake, maybe even satire. But when she walked Toby the next morning, Denise emerged from behind a row of hedges with her phone raised like a radar gun. Snap. Then again, snap. She didn't wave, didn't speak, just zoomed in on Toby's paws with the focus of a wildlife researcher tracking a rare specimen. 3 days later, 3 separate fines arrived, each for $125. Repeat noncompliance. Failure to observe protective protocols. Negligence in turf preservation. It stopped being funny. Toby was gentle, old-souled, rescued after Hurricane Ian left him shivering under a gas station awning. For Madison, walking him barefoot in the mornings wasn't just routine, it was healing. And now, every step came with the weight of eyes, fines, and a thickening sense of invasion. The final shove came one humid Thursday morning as Madison was locking her gate after watering her porch plants. Denise stormed up the sidewalk, clipboard in one hand, phone in the other, and barked across the lawn like she was addressing a crowd. "If that dog isn't wearing shoes tomorrow," she snapped, "I will file a report with animal control. This is environmental misconduct, and you are not above the rules." Madison stood there, stunned. Toby blinked up at her, tail wagging, one paw half lifted off the warm concrete, like even he wasn't sure what just happened. What kind of place finds a dog for existing? And more importantly, what kind of person tries to enforce it like it's gospel? Something deep in Madison, something patient and tired, started to harden. She'd spent her life saving people. She wasn't about to let someone like Denise turn her home into a battleground over a golden retriever's paws. Denise Coulter had always been that neighbor, tightly wound, rule-obsessed, and strangely proud of her clipboard. Most people in Bayshore Pines had learned to keep their heads down. She once had a Halloween skeleton removed because it implied violence. Another time, she demanded a neighbor repaint their front door from crimson to beige because the red evoked hostility. Her sense of order wasn't about safety or community. It was about control. But this time, it was personal. Madison had lived through things Denise couldn't imagine: mass casualty nights, pandemic ICU tents, loss without closure. Toby had come into her life when she needed him most. She found him during hurricane cleanup, trembling and half-starved in the ruins of an animal shelter. Nursing him back to health gave her a reason to breathe again, as I did Berinden. He wasn't a pet. He was therapy, family, and Denise had turned his morning walks into acts of defiance. It wasn't about grass. It was about power. Denise didn't just enforce rules. She weaponized them. She wore her laminated HOA bylaws like armor and walked with a posture that dared anyone to question her. Her pearl necklace never moved out of place, no matter how many veins bulged in her neck when she lectured about sidewalk edge lines or mailbox symmetry. And of course, the bumper sticker on her hybrid SUV summed her up in 3 haunting words: order is everything. That wasn't just a motto, that was her mission. Whispers began to surface. A neighbor mentioned that Denise once tried to outlaw bird feeders, claiming the seeds invited pests. Another told Madison, with a guilty glance over their shoulder, that she'd called the police on a group of elementary schoolers drawing chalk flowers outside her house. Chalk in pastel colors on a public sidewalk. And now she had a new target: Toby. Soon, the HOA board began sending formal emails to Madison. They used veiled threats, polished with bureaucratic coldness. Ongoing non-compliance may result in daily fines. Please be advised of the possibility of community review. Repeat violations may trigger enforcement protocol. But Denise didn't stop at email. She escalated to spectacle. The monthly HOA newsletter, a 2-page document most people barely glanced at, suddenly featured a new section titled Community Lawn Awareness. Front and center was a zoomed-in photo of Toby mid-stride, one paw firmly planted on the greenway between lots. Beneath it, in bold italics, turf abuser caught again. No context, no explanation. Just an image and an accusation. Madison stared at the newsletter in stunned silence. She felt it like a punch, not because of the picture, but because of what it meant. Denise wasn't just enforcing rules anymore. She was painting targets, publicly, deliberately. This wasn't about community. This was about humiliation. The leash had slipped off, and Denise was pulling the whole neighborhood with her. What hurt most was the silence. Neighbors who once smiled at Madison now avoided eye contact. Some weren't siding with Denise, but they weren't speaking up either. Because in Bayshore Pines, it was easier to nod along than to push back. But Madison wasn't built for silence, and she wasn't the kind of woman who backed down from a fight, especially not when someone messed with Toby. Madison didn't shout. She didn't bang on doors. She didn't scrawl angry posts on neighborhood forums. She opened her laptop and got to work. Denise had mistaken Madison's silence for surrender. But what Denise didn't know, what she never bothered to ask, was that Madison wasn't just a dog owner. She was a respected trauma nurse, a certified emergency responder, and a longtime member of the Florida Veterinary Response Corps. Her volunteer work had put her shoulder to shoulder with wildlife biologists, search and rescue teams, and national policy advocates. And more importantly, she had connections. Within 48 hours, Madison had looped in colleagues at the American Veterinary Medical Association, the Animal Legal Defense Fund, and 3 state ethics boards. She compiled a file of expert statements and case references on canine paw health. She gathered thermal data on Florida sidewalks, proof that forced footwear could harm dogs when not medically necessary. One of her contacts, a veterinary legal specialist, helped her draft a formal position that mandating shoes for dogs in everyday conditions could cross the line into animal welfare violations. She didn't just argue back. She built a case. Then Madison took it one step further. That same month, the AVMA was launching a public outreach campaign on paw safety and comfort in urban environments. Madison saw her chance and pitched them a headline event with a twist: paw health awareness, standing against absurd HOA footwear mandates. The campaign team loved it. They wanted visibility. They wanted a message that would stick. Madison offered them exactly that, and a perfect symbol to go with it. Together, they prepared a high-profile media delivery, 500 promotional paw protectors in various colors and sizes, complete with educational pamphlets, vet-approved stickers, and leaflets titled, "Don't Force It, Understanding Canine Comfort." But here's where the plan became surgical. The entire shipment was addressed not to Madison, but to Denise Coulter. She would be listed as the official recipient and community distributor by title, Green Space Officer. The box, roughly the size of a dishwasher. The label, bold, professional, and impossible to ignore. For distribution to all HOA residents per request of Green Space Officer Denise Coulter. It would arrive during peak daylight hours. It would come with a smile, and it would say, without a single harsh word, "You wanted to lead. Here's your moment." Madison didn't need to fight dirty. She just needed to let the truth speak louder than the rulebook. The truck rolled into Bayshore Pines on a sunlit Saturday morning, just as folding chairs were being arranged for the HOA's monthly lawn care demonstration. Residents stood clustered with paper coffee cups in hand, half listening to a local landscaper talk about fertilizer ratios, until a large delivery van pulled into the center of the cul-de-sac. 2 volunteers stepped out, wearing matching vet clinic scrubs and bright smiles. They opened the back of the van and began carefully rolling out a massive cardboard box on a dolly. It was professionally sealed, labeled in crisp black lettering, for distribution to all HOA residents, per request of Green Space Officer Denise Coulter. Whispers rose like steam from the gathering crowd. People squinted, leaned in, stepped closer. A toddler pointed. Someone gasped when the side of the box flapped slightly open to reveal dozens, hundreds of colorful, rubberized dog booties and glossy educational brochures. Then came the flash of a camera. A local news team, tipped off by a quiet press release from Madison's veterinary colleagues, had shown up to cover the event. The cameras rolled smoothly across the scene, catching the moment Denise Coulter, clipboard in hand, lips pursed tight, walked into the middle of it all. She froze as one of the volunteers approached her with a friendly clipboard and asked, "You're Miss Coulter, correct? We have you listed as the community distributor for today's Paw Health Awareness campaign." Denise's face went pale, then flushed to a deep splotchy red. As she scrambled to read the packaging slip, a curious child looked up and asked in a loud, innocent voice, "Is this for your dog or for your rules?" The crowd erupted in a wave of uncomfortable chuckles. Some neighbors smiled for the first time in weeks. Others simply watched, a little stunned, as Denise stood speechless in the middle of a message she herself had unknowingly authored. By Monday morning, the HOA board issued a carefully worded apology to Madison. The fines were erased. The photos of Toby were quietly removed from the newsletter, and Denise's Green Space Coordinator duties were officially limited pending review. But the biggest statement didn't come from the board. It came weeks later when the American Veterinary Association launched their national campaign on pet care ethics. The opening image? Madison, walking barefoot on the greenway. Toby beside her, leash loose, both of them smiling under an open sky. The campaign's tagline, printed across billboards and online banners, read, "Some laws just don't fit." Madison never gloated. She didn't need to. Every morning after the storm, she and Toby resumed their quiet walks, bare-pawed and peaceful. They passed Denise's house just as the sun rose, unbothered and free. Sometimes neighbors waved. Occasionally, someone asked where they could get a copy of the brochure. And always, on the curb outside Madison's recycling bin, sat that same oversized delivery box, its lid propped open, its contents untouched, its label still readable. Like a message in plain sight, control doesn't grow well on green grass.